Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is a relatively recent acquisition and I don't like these plastic mounts, so it's coming off. It's not necessarily the best time of year to do this sort of thing, but this has got a few active roots. That's all I really need to know at this time of year. If there's a few roots with growing tips that I don't damage getting this off, then it should carry on growing. In fact, it should probably grow better because it's hopefully going to be in a better environment than just on a bare piece of plastic. And we might get a lot of horrible noise in a minute. The men with the power tools are around again. Whatever happened to hand tools? Right, now what I'm going to do is loosen as much as I can, or check that it's either loose or it's not, and what gets left behind will have to be left behind. There's nothing I can do about it, but what I am going to try and do is pull some of these roots through that have gone from the front to the back. Now they'll probably break. If they break, it's a branching root system, they may well carry on growing, but we've got ones that have gone from the front to the back, and then some of those have gone back out to the front again, and some of them have looped through on, you know, sort of several goes. Chances of those coming out whole are very slim, but nonetheless we can have a go at unthreading all I can. That had a nice growing tip on it, now it hasn't. That's just how it'll have to be. As I said, they won't all come off. Some will, some won't. We've got another piece of wire here that I haven't seen. It seems to be quite firmly attached. Right. It's just a matter of tugging and seeing what comes through. I don't know what on earth that machine is they've got going now. Well, quite a few of them came out. Some of them didn't, that was expected. But nonetheless, we've still got quite a few left. Now, this is zombie moss, so we'll get rid of that because we're replacing it with live moss. There's no point in leaving moss that's destined to go off. God, that sounds like some real heavy duty kit, doesn't it? It almost sounds like one of those wood shredders, where you chuck logs in and chips come out the other end. Could be. Right, now this is an incredibly gnarly piece of bark. The reason it's gnarly is that that big piece there and that big piece there didn't look very strong, so I just broke them off. And the fact that they came off quite easy probably meant that there's an element of rot, but the rest of it is firm, so it should be okay. And what I'm going to do is, because I'm using live moss, I'm going to use the live moss to fill these cracks up in the mount, because otherwise it's just not flat, is it? And this is possibly what a normal branch might look like in the wild, you know, where the moss would get in all the crevices. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah? Right, so we've got some moss. I don't always put moss underneath, but it's just the fact that this is so uneven and there are crevices. The roots are going to head for those crevices, I expect. So now what we've got to do is, in fact, some of these, where's my scissors? Some of these really long ones are going to come off. And then hopefully they'll branch. So something like about there. Something like that. Right, I've got I'm going to wire this rather than tie it. It's just quicker and quite honestly more straightforward. So we'll get ourselves a decent length of wire. This is quite thin wire, so it's very flexible, and it also makes it a lot cheaper. It's bonsai wire, it's sold by weight. Right, so we've got one new growth on there which I would like to maintain, and this plant has an absolute central point where canes go down and then go up from that point. So that's a perfect, absolutely perfect place to put the wire around. So that's what we'll do. So that's one. Now I've got to go under there now. This is the problem when you've got a lot of canes that are tight to the mount. You don't want the wire over the top. You need the wire to go underneath. And having got it underneath the canes, at that point I'm now going to put a little bit of moss on top of the roots. Not much. It'll just keep them better hydrated. I'm not getting any moss near the base of the plant. I'm just putting some over some of the roots. Right, so that's the bottom section. I'll put a little bit more there in case those roots branch. Now what I've got to do is hold that moss in place. So first job then is to take the wire around a few times to capture that moss and stop it slipping and falling off. And my wire is nowhere near long enough. Nowhere near long enough. So we'll leave that loose end there. I'll tie that in a minute. As it's wire, I can just twist it round another piece and the end is now secure. Now we need another piece. That's very unusual for me to run out and have a piece that's just too short. I normally end up with loads left over. Right, God, it's warm in here. The fan's gone off, obviously, so I can work. It's good, the heat wave's finished and yet still it's hot. But it's hot normal now, not hot silly. So instead of being, I mean, yes, we had over 40 degrees here yesterday in the country somewhere. In fact, in quite a few places, but not here, because I'm too close to the coast to get a temperature like that. The temperature here in the garden was probably, I don't know definitely, but was probably about, I would say, 34, 35. I doubt if it was any higher than that. Doubt it at all. So I'm just joining my new piece of wire onto the old piece. Then we can carry on from where we left off, which is a little bit of moss above the plant, because there are roots pointing upwards. Now, there's not going to be much, just a bit, because I don't want moss around the base of the plant. Come winter time, you know, that could end up being too wet and start some rot at the base of the plant. But we do have a new growth coming out at that point. So again, I've got to get in underneath the suit at the canes, but over the top of the moss and the roots, and not garrot my new growth. I didn't even know I had that new growth. I've only noticed that now that I've started work on the plant. So just over the top there. And we'll go around again to get that top lot of moss held. So again, under the canes, around there, hold that moss. Now I can come back down and just use up the wire by going round again a couple of times. No point in cutting it off really, I just as well do a couple of extra turns. Help hold everything in place. Bit of extra security for the moss. Right, round the back, and now I need somewhere for my end to be tied off. See, the original end, what that I would have used, has already been used to connect the new piece on. So I now haven't got an end. So all I need is somewhere to loop this round. So I'll just make one. I'll just make a loop. As I said, it's thin enough wire to be able to do that sort of thing. And we can just wind that end round. That'll do. It's a bit clumsy looking. And the little bit that's sticking out, I suppose we could actually put the tag on. What? Roger remembered the tag? Oh, there's a thing. Well, it was there and it's already got a hole in it, so I just as well use it, haven't I? Just as well use it. Let's cut that pointy bit off. There we go, and that end will tuck round there nicely. So we've got our tag on, and now we tighten everything up by pressing it in, and the same round the front. Any indentations, just push the wire into it. It tightens everything. So there we go. We've got our two canes sticking out sideways. That's possibly next year's blooms. And we got our new growth tucked in there. Okay, so that's right dead centre. And these are old seedling canes down here, so they're not going to do anything. The latest growth has actually pointed upwards. There's a tiny little cane there that hasn't come to anything, but these are the two canes that are highly likely to bloom next year. If not, then perhaps on the new growth that it's just growing now. So we shall see how it goes. So there we go, a relatively quick mount, and a plastic mount removed and a cork mount replacement, which in my opinion looks an awful lot better. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.